Alberta Occupational Health and Safety charges 3 companies in deaths of 2 workers. Quebecers oppose graphite mine, citing environmental concerns and Pentagon involvement. 4 pro-Palestine demonstrators arrested in Toronto. Israel carries out one of the worst attacks to date, killing over 200 people in Gaza. And ISIL-affiliated fighters kill 38 people in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Good morning. It's Monday, June 10th. I'm Nora. That's my birthday, folks. It's my freaking birthday. Here are your headlines. Alberta Occupational Health and Safety has charged 3 companies with the deaths of 2 workers. The 2 men, Greg Podolsky and Darcy Schwint, were killed in an explosion while working on an oil and gas site north of Edmonton in November 2022. Podolsky was 29 and Schwint was 47. The charges were laid earlier this month against Tamarack Valley Energy of Calgary, Voltagic Energy Services of Athabasca, and Peace Pipe Fitting of Wembley. According to reporting by CBC's Madeleine Cummings, they were charged with failing to ensure workers' health and safety. Podolsky and Schwint were welding on top of a tank when an explosion occurred within a tank storage facility, which caused them both fatal injuries. Part of the charges against the 3 companies included failing to ensure that the work the 2 were doing did not start until work permits had been issued. The area was to be tested to ensure it did not contain combustible materials or flammable substances. The company's first court appearance will be on July 17th. Next to Quebec, where residents in the Laurentians region are becoming increasingly outspoken about plans for a BC company to build a graphite mine. According to reporting by Joe Bongiorno for CBC News, the residents have been protesting the mine since last year, citing environmental concerns. Then early last month, they found out that the U.S. Department of Defense had given the company an $11.4 million grant, in addition to a $5 million grant that they got from Natural Resources Canada to study the possibility of converting graphite into battery-grade material for powering electric vehicles. The Pentagon issued a statement on the mine saying it would be used for quote-unquote defense applications, giving the residents another reason to oppose it. A spokesperson for the group called Coalition Québécoise des Lacs Incompatibles à l'Activité Minière Saint-Hilaire told CBC this, quote, "They were telling us it was an ecological project for making electric batteries, but now we have serious doubts," unquote. The CBC contacted the U.S. Department of Defense and the U.S. Consul General with questions about how the graphite would be used, but neither responded. The company behind the mine says that it would be conducting feasibility studies that will be subject to review by the Quebec government and that it expects construction to begin in 2027. And a reminder, whenever you're hearing about graphite mining, graphite is something that is possible to be synthetically made. And when you make graphite synthetically, you use carbon. It's an interesting possible path for carbon capture and usage. So I'm always very critical when I see that there's more discussions about new mines, when we are closer and closer and closer to synthetic graphite being able to do what regular graphite does. Next, videos online show police violently confronting pro-Palestinian protesters over the weekend in Toronto. Protesters were demonstrating in front of the U.S. consulate in downtown Toronto, where they have been protesting nearly every weekend since October 7th. Police showed up and arrested 4 people, with one video showing police seemingly punching a protester in the face. The protesters were there as part of a global call for Joe Biden to enforce his quote-unquote red line in Gaza and to demand a ceasefire. Now, if you're wondering why I'm not mentioning that there was also a couple thousand people that marched yesterday in Toronto in favor of genocide, well, I don't really know if fascist organizing of that kind is all that newsworthy. But yes, people are also organized and mobilized to call for Israel to, I don't know, kill more people. It's hard to tell what exactly their messaging is. Meanwhile, in Gaza, Israel carried out one of the worst of its attacks against Palestinians there in an operation by the IDF that freed 4 hostages. The attack killed more than 200 people in what has been described as a bloodbath. The attack took place in central Gaza's Nuseirat refugee camp, where reporting suggests that IDF forces entered the camp using aid trucks, something that the Israeli army denied and would constitute a war crime. Hospitals in Gaza, which are already overwhelmed and mostly destroyed, were unable to keep up with the influx of injured people as a result of the attack. In the aftermath of the attack, Hamas said that 3 other hostages had been killed, something Israeli officials also denied. This attack comes a few days after the UN added Israel to a blacklist of countries that is committing abuses against children, as its genocide in Gaza has overwhelmingly killed and maimed Palestinian children. In the aftermath of the attack on Sunday, Benny Gantz resigned from Benjamin Netanyahu's war cabinet after having threatened to do so last month. He's accusing Netanyahu of putting his interests ahead of Israel's security and of mismanaging the situation in Gaza. Gantz is widely considered to be Netanyahu's biggest opponent. He is a former national defense minister and is someone who does believe that Hamas needs to be destroyed by Israel and Israel needs to impose new government structures on Palestine. Those positions remain in the genocidal camp. So while it'll be interesting to see what happens with Netanyahu next, let's not kid ourselves that Gantz is hardly a saint in this scenario. Finally, officials in civil society in the Democratic Republic of Congo are blaming ISIL-affiliated fighters for the killing of 38 people in an attack on a village in the country's eastern region. Officials say the recent surge in violence is due to the lack of a security presence in the area. The attackers are part of the Allied Democratic Forces. The group pledged alliance to ISIL in 2018. According to officials, they've killed 50 people in the country just this week. The eastern part of the DRC has been dealing with violence for decades, which has escalated in recent years and months, displacing millions of people. Those are your headlines for Monday, June 10th. I'm Nora. You're listening to this podcast at sandynora.com, on the Real News Network podcast feed, and anywhere you get your podcasts. I'm celebrating my 40th birthday today, folks, so I'm going to take the day off. I'm going to post this episode everywhere you see it online, and then I'm going to just disappear for the rest of the day.